Hi, it's Miss Laura. We're out in the woods today doing a few activities, sharing activities together. The next one is if you're ever in the forest. And by the way, we have a lot of picture books. We have a lot of picture books on life in the forest plants, forest animals. I was just online looking at all of those before we left the house. And unfortunately, I don't have any of them at home with me right now, but sooner or later, you'll be able to check them out and we can share them in story time in the library sometime. Let's get on the same page. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let me see, let me see. Show me that you're ready, show me that you're ready. 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. All right, so I kind of made this up. It's not one that I do in story time a lot. So the tune is going to be If You're Ever in the Forest, and I'm going to name something, and then we're going to see if we can do the movement that might give the idea of whatever that is, whether it's an animal or a plant. And maybe I'll try to trick you. Maybe I'll name something that wouldn't be out in the forest. And so we're here in Mercer County. Keep that in mind. We're in Mercer County and Hamilton. And think of the things that you would find nearby in Lawrenceville or East Windsor, or West Windsor, or Hopewell, or Ewing, or wherever you live in Mercer County. All right, so if you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see some trees. Is that true? Of course it is. Raise your hands up and spread your fingers. If you're ever in the forest, you might see some trees. All right, good job. Next one is, if you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see some birds. What do you think? Yes, of course we might see some birds. Let's do it. If you're ever in the forest, you might see some birds. Are you doing it with me? You might see some birds. And I can totally hear them. Louder than anything in the background. If we're very quiet, you might hear the frogs. Let me just zip it for a minute and listen. You hear them? It's their time of year. All right, so next one is, if you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see a camel. I can't think if I've seen any camels. No, right? Camels live in the desert, right? They don't live in the forest, so we're not going to see any camels out here today. Next one is, if you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see the creek. You might see the creek. Yes or no? Yes, you might see the creek. This is just a little spillover of the creek. The creek is actually straight ahead of me, and we'll go back to that later. All right, so what movement could we do for that? This one's pretty puny, but in the bigger creek, the water comes, the tide comes in, and the tide comes out, all right? If you're ever in the forest, you might see the creek. You might see the creek. All right, excellent job. Let's do another one, and let me see. Let's do this. If you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see a deer. Would we see a deer out in the forest? Yes, absolutely. We see deer all the time, and they're fast, and there's certain areas where they like to cross and we see them. It's a lot of fun. And so how could we act like a deer? We'd have to jump. Stand up here. If you're ever in the forest, you might see a deer. You might see a deer. And they go pretty high too. All right, next one is, let's see. If you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see a polar bear. You might see a polar bear. What do you think, yes or no? No, you will not see a polar bear, not here. They live where it's cold, all right? If you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see some squirrels. What do you think, yes or no for squirrels in the forest? Of course, yes. We haven't seen one yet today, but they are out here for sure. And how can we do that? Let's pretend we're squirrels gathering nuts and wrinkling our noses. Let's do it. If you're ever in the forest, wrinkle, you might see a squirrel. Again, you might see a squirrel. Good job. Do I have another one to do? Oh, yes, yes. This one is, if you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see a snake. Would you see a snake in the forest? I can tell you that yes, absolutely, you will see a snake in the forest. And in fact, I better watch where I'm sitting in case it's springtime and if the weather's nice today, they may pop out. And as much as I don't really like snakes, they're a part of the ecosystem, and sometimes they even come out of these woods and they come up to my backyard and they harass the birds. So yes, you will see some snakes. And how can we do that? Show me your arms. Show me your twisty arms like this. Make the sound with me. If you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see some snakes. All right, good job. And last one is, if you're ever in the forest, the forest, the forest, if you're ever in the forest, you might see an octopus. What do you think? Would you see an octopus in this forest? In that creek? Probably not. Probably not. I don't even know if we followed this little part of the creek to Doctor's Creek and then we followed it to Crosswicks Creek, which is bigger. We could follow it to the Delaware River. That would go all the way down to the Delaware Bay, and then it goes into the Atlantic Ocean. And then we might see an octopus. Let's do it anyway. Show me your arms and your legs. How many do you have? 4? We'd need 8, right? If you, how am I doing it? Would you ever see an octopus, an octopus, an octopus? If you're ever in the forest, you wouldn't see an octopus. All right, that's the end of my game, and thank you for helping me. I hope you did the movements with me. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks for listening.